These are my biggest questions for the Florida Gators offense heading into this 2023 season. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On Gators.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. Happy Wednesday. I'm Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Line Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33. Fourth time this week already. Great time to be a Florida Gator, huh? We are going to talk about my biggest questions, at least, for the Florida Gators offense during this 2023 season, because there's a lot of change. There's no doubt about that. But I think you'd be remiss to not start with, is Graham Mertz the guy? Because he was brought in to be the guy. We expect him to be the guy. But even if he is the starter, is he the guy, is my point. Competing with Jack Miller III, still no starting quarterback has been officially named at this point. I would not expect that announcement to come until very close to the actual start of the season. But it's Graham Mertz or it's Jack Miller III. It's likely going to be Graham Mertz. And I've said this, I don't know, at least a million times at this point. Graham Mertz is not as physically talented as Anthony Richardson. I don't think he's as, we'll say as off the cuff as Anthony Richardson. He's not going to be as good at extending plays and creating plays and giving you those wow moments. He's clearly not as explosive as Anthony Richardson because, well, no quarterback is. And he's not as dynamic as Anthony Richardson because, well, very few quarterbacks are in history, let alone playing college football right now. But if Graham Mertz can make the throws that he needs to, none of that matters. That was a big thing that I've talked about pretty consistently with Graham Mertz is, yes, when you have Graham Mertz, your offense is getting less explosive in general, like your entire offense is getting less explosive. It's getting less dynamic. But what you lose from Anthony Richardson's rushing production, I think you gain in the little things that Anthony Richardson struggled with. Yeah, you're not going to have, an 80-yard rushing touchdown from your quarterback this year. It's not going to happen. You're not going to have a 60-yard rushing touchdown. You might not have an 8-yard rushing touchdown from your quarterback this year. However, you're going to see likely less. He missed that slant, and that really screwed up. That he missed the slant on 3rd and 2. He overthrew it in front of Justin Shorter, which I think was against South Florida, I want to say. You're probably not going to have that as much. So it's like, yeah, you lose some of that explosiveness and dynamic playmaking ability, but you also, I think, gain a little more stability, which you could argue is equal to that. Like, yes, less home run plays, more singles. Okay, that's what you're looking at. Less. That's what we're doing. We're doing a baseball reference here. Okay. Graham Mertz is Luis Arias. All right. He's not gonna hit home runs. A ton of singles though. He's gonna get on base. All right. That's what we're talking about with Graham Mertz here. He's not Joey Gallo. He's Luis Arias, and that's a fine thing to have. Anthony Richardson was Joey Gallo. Graham Mertz, Luis Arias. And yeah, no, I don't think Graham Mertz is incredible by really any stretch of the word. I don't think he's even maybe a top 25 quarterback in the country, but I also certainly don't think he's the worst quarterback in the SEC. Yeah, I don't think he's the worst quarterback in the SEC, regardless of whatever publication wants to put that list out. Looking at you, Brady Cook, and AJ Swan, and Brady Cook is better than people give him credit for. I still don't think he's better than Graham Mertz. I am interested to see, can Graham Mertz find ways to win when the running game isn't working? Because that's not really something he's ever really had to do, even at Wisconsin. The run game always either worked or they would stick with it until the game was over, regardless of whether or not it was working. Graham Mertz was very rarely, if ever, given the opportunity to kind of not carry the offense, but try to drag the offense through and try to power the offense through. Because again, with Wisconsin, they were always, or almost always, at least in the game enough where they very rarely had to abandon the run game. Wisconsin's run game is, forever one of the most consistent running offenses in college football. And so even if the run game wasn't really working too much, they would stick with it because they also had Jim Leonhard as defensive coordinator. And he is, I cannot express how incredible Jim Leonhard is as a defensive coordinator. But yeah, he was an incredible defensive coordinator, and they would almost never have to abandon the run game because they would almost never be that far behind where they had to do that. So I'd be interested to see, because this year that's going to happen. I still think the defense is going to be much improved, but you're playing in the SEC this year, not the Big Ten. Like, it's easy to not fall behind when you're playing offenses like Iowa, Nebraska, Northwestern, Penn State, like when you're in your Purdue, Illinois, when you're playing those offenses that aren't as explosive or dynamic, then it's easy to not fall behind there. You don't get that luxury in the SEC. So I'm curious to see if Graham Mertz can find ways to win. If he can, not again, I don't need you to carry the offense, but keep your cool, keep your composure. And if it's 2nd and 10, I need you to be able to pick up 6 yards here. Somehow, I need you to pick up 6 yards or more, whether it's a slant, a hitch, a curl. I don't care really. It's hitch and curl, same stuff. But I don't care. However it is, you can get it done. Get it done. Also, can you pick up a 3rd and 2 for me if you're Graham Mertz? Because that's also something where we haven't seen him do it much, but it's also important to note he hasn't been asked to do it much. That's another thing where we don't know if he could do it, that's I think the most, or not surprising. I think the most concerning thing for me with Graham Mertz is just he's been a starter for years. He's been asked to do so little on his own, which is why I say, like, I'm not concerned, or I'm not saying he can't do these things because he wasn't asked to do them. I'm just concerned if he can. He picked up, I think in the past 2 years, it was 23 first downs with his legs in the past 2 years. That's fine. Like, if you could do that for me, that's awesome. I would love it. Like just pick up the first downs, whether that's QB sneak, whether that's, let's say, a read option on 3rd and 2. Because that if you're Graham Mertz, like defenses are not going to respect Graham Mertz in the run game the same way they respected Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson was so explosive that you can respect what he can do in the run game and still not stop him. That's called a dominant playmaker right there. With Graham Mertz, you know what he can do in the run game for the most part. You don't respect that. And so if it's 3rd and 2 and they dial up a read option, that defense is flying after the ball. You have to fly against this Florida run game. So if it's Graham Mertz, can he keep that and pick up that first down real quick? Like, are you going to be willing to do that here? If he can, awesome, fantastic. And here's the thing also. We're about to talk about the offense, but with the way that this team is being built, you don't need an elite quarterback to have a strong offense. It certainly helps, but you don't need an elite quarterback to have a strong offense. So for me, I'm not saying, if can Graham Mertz be the guy, I'm not saying he needs to be a top 10, 15, 20, 25 quarterback in the country. But can you be average enough to lead this team and lead this offense to victories? Because that's what you need to do. Like we know this is what Billy Napier wants to do this year. He wants to run the ball, kill the clock, keep the defense fresh, and then let the defense make a play quickly, get the ball back, and rinse, repeat that. You don't need great to do that. You need average at quarterback to do that. Just don't shoot the offense in the foot. So can you do that, Graham Mertz? I think he can, which is all I'm asking for you. So if he can do that, great. Graham Mertz is the guy for me. Like I just said, we are about to talk about this offense. But first, today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. You can take your first swing at betting on the MLB. It's the All-Star break. Everybody's coming back fresh and relaxed. Take your first swing at betting on the MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet back in bonus bets up to $200 there. So you can bet $20 on Randy Arozarena hitting a home run in the first game back. You could bet on him hitting the first home run in his first game back too. And either he hits the home run and you make money, or he doesn't hit the home run and you get $200 back in bonus bets. That's a win-win, right? Like this is one of those things where even when you lose, you win. So it's fantastic there. But all of that can be done with an app that's safe, secure, and incredibly easy to use. The search feature that they added in the past couple months, fantastic. I love it. But just letting that one go. Sign up today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 back in bonus bets. It's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts. And for the rest of the show, we are going to continue talking about the questions of the offense. But for this segment, I need to know what the offense will even look like. Because we know that a lot of the principles are going to stay the same. We know that you're still going to see two tight end sets pretty frequently. Maybe less frequently, but I don't think so this year, maybe next year. But we know that 12 personnel is still going to be very relevant in this offense. One running back, two tight ends. I don't think that that's going to change as far as seeing more 22 personnel, two running backs, two tight ends, which could be fun. Put a wide receiver out wide. Maybe it's Aiden Mizell, so you got that speed threat out there. Tight end on each side of the line of scrimmage, running back on each side of Graham Mertz. Maybe you see that. I don't know if we do. I do plan on doing a full show about just what kind of fun you can have with that if you're Billy Napier. But I don't know if we do that because just Billy Napier's is historically he has one running back that he's just going to run a ton with, alternate or bring in a new running back, run a ton with him, bring in a new running back, run a ton with him, keep constant fresh legs cycling in. Motion isn't going anywhere. If you have a problem with motion, get over it. Because really, if you have a problem with the motion, it's not a problem with the motion. It was a problem with, one, the execution of it last year, and two, who's doing it. It should not have ever been Xavier Henderson, but it was. And that was my issue with it. It shouldn't have been Xavier. It shouldn't have been X. And I have no problem with him. He's just not a good... If you're doing that motion, the jet motion, orbit bubble, whatever it is, it should not be a guy who is just straight line fast and not shifty at all. It has to be someone who can create after the catch. Xavier Henderson couldn't really do that. Like he can make a man miss and then burst enough to make it, no gain of one, whatever. But he wasn't turning those into consistent big plays. That was the issue. He's not Kadarius Toney. Don't use him like that. We're going to see the RPO be a thing. Like, there's no doubt about that. The RPO is still going to be involved in this offense. It's still going to be a pretty important part of this offense. Will it be as featured? I don't know. And also, are you going to change the kind of RPO you did? Because last year we know Anthony Richardson had the green light on every RPO to keep it. So one, are you going to call those plays where Graham Mertz has the green light? Or are you just giving him the green light also? Are you just going, hey, like you're our quarterback? Because Billy Napier's always put the stress on playing quarterback for the Florida Gators or playing quarterback for him, where he's like, hey, if you're my quarterback, you have to have my trust, the coaching staff's trust, the locker room's trust. Like it's a lot to play quarterback for Billy Napier. Let's not get that twisted in any way, shape, or form. It's difficult to earn that job. So if you trust someone that much, do you just go, hey, you have the green light to do it as long as you do it when it actually works? So you have the green light to do it, or as long as you do it when it was the right read. So you have the green light to do it. But Graham Mertz still probably wouldn't keep it that frequently. I do think we see Graham Mertz have his career, it set his career high for rushing yards this season, which 2020, 109 yards, according to Pro Football Focus, is his career high. I think we see him pass that just because he's going to have more volume than he's ever had before, which still probably won't be a ton, but more volume than he's ever had before. So Graham Mertz, like with the RPO, we know Graham Mertz is going to be capable of making the read and the throw, but not having the mobility of AR, it takes away the, I want to say, effectiveness. Because, yeah, you could still easily operate the RPO as far as literally just run or pass, but having the additional threat of running with the running back, running with the quarterback, or passing the ball is the real killer. It's like a modern day triple option. It's like, yep, we can run this read and then chuck it real quick. But now you maybe take that away because you can just go, okay, our edge or like our edge is coming in anyway. Our linebacker is jumping into whatever throwing lane you would have on a slant, we'll say. And then like you play cover 2 there, and it's just okay. Linebacker's going to be in there, or maybe even your nickel is going to be in that spot. Flat's covered because the corner has the flat. You have to hand it off, but everyone else is flying to the ball. And so at that point, you go, okay, Graham Mertz, take off with it. Like you have the green light. So I'm curious to see about that. That's one of my biggest questions with actually working this offense schematically is just, will Graham Mertz have that green light? Personally, I'd give it to him. Like I said, he's not a great athlete. We know that. He's not as bad as an athlete as people like to make him seem. I just think that he's not very shifty. I think he can get, those first yards when he's like, all right, I'm running this. I think he could do that. Like, and also just as far as schematically, last season, this offense was a lot of underneath passes or deep shots downfield. I expect that to change kind of drastically to be a lot of underneath and intermediate work. Yes, I've pulled the numbers up before. Graham Mertz has been pretty dang solid when throwing the ball deep downfield. Let's look at the numbers specifically. When throwing 20 plus yards downfield last season, he had 53 attempts, 22 completions, 41.5% completion percentage. I know that, no one is going to be like, oh, 41.5%. Look at the Heismertz over here. But when you look at that, that's only on passes that traveled 20 or more yards past the line of scrimmage. You're looking at someone then who actually did it kind of well. 41% would have been top 40. He was 39th in the country in terms of completion percentage on 20 plus yards downfield. He had 621 yards on those, 11.7 yards per attempt on those, which let's see how that compares. 11.7% or 11.7 yards per attempt. Not as good. That's obviously, or at least I would think, good deal of that is due to not having the most dynamic weapons available at Wisconsin. 9 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 18 big-time throws from Graham Mertz there. Big-time throw percentage would have been 31%, which places him smack dab at 17th in the country. Big throw percentage, 20-plus yards downfield. Turnover-worthy plays, 6.9%, which is 69th nice in the country. Like that's I'm comfortable with all those numbers. However, that wasn't against SEC defenses. Big Ten has some good defenses, but also a good deal of bad defenses. So, that's going to obviously be different. You're going up against SEC cornerbacks this year. You're going up against SEC pass rush this year as well. That's going to change how much time you'll have in the pocket. Also, you're going to have an offense that is not going to run the ball 70% of the time. Okay, you're not going to have that. And so you're not like defenses aren't going to be sagging off as much. Or I don't want to say sagging off, but biting on the run as much. Also, there was a lack of attempts last year from Graham Mertz throwing the ball deep downfield. Defenses, nobody on the planet was going into the Wisconsin game going, all right, guys, watch the deep ball. Watch the deep ball. No one did that. This year, whether or not they want to do that against Florida, you're going up against more athletic and more talented defenses. So, will you be able to complete that deep ball? I don't know. However, if you can work the intermediate and underneath stuff, it probably opens up the deep ball more because they're like, oh, God, now we have to watch the underneath so much. You could open things up. Curious to see what kind of green light he gets there as well. It's time to look at the tight end room, which everybody knows. Tight end is my favorite position on the roster. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. I will say this. Tight end room is my favorite position on offense, not including fullbacks. Because everyone knows, fullbacks, you have my heart. But last year, Keon Zipper and Dante Sanders were used far too much. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, they shouldn't be on the field. They're not good enough to start. I don't mean that at all. What I do mean, though, is that there was just such little tight end rotation last year, which you could argue is just, you had Arliss Boardingham was hurt. You had Jonathan Odom was your tight end 3. You had not a ton of not a ton of depth that was proven. You had true freshmen as your 4th and 5th, and maybe you didn't want to play them too much at that point, which is understandable, but still feel like they should have played more. Nick Elksnis didn't play. Noah Keeter didn't play. Griffin McDowell didn't play. There was so little tight end rotation. You didn't even give other people a chance to show what they could do in game. That has to be different this year. Keon Zipper is out for the year, is the understanding right now. That's the expectation. Keon Zipper not playing this year. Dante Sanders last year was, non-existent in the passing game. And in the running game, wasn't a very good blocker. He was very meh. But on the flip side of that, Dante Sanders has lost 20 pounds from last year. Should be more agile running, so should be a better threat in the passing game. Probably swapped some of his fat for muscle, and so he should be stronger as a blocker. Also, last year was his first year as a tight end with the Gators, or first year focusing full-time as a tight end on the Gators. Prior to that, he was working with the edge. Okay? So that he had no technique really. And tight end is probably one of the most important positions as far as technique. Receiver, you need technique to go to the NFL, but in college, a lot of times you could just be really fast. And you could just get open with that. That's not going to happen as a tight end. You're not going to survive as a blocker with no technique. That's just not going to work. So Dante Sanders, I do expect to be significantly better this year. How much better? I don't know. Or I don't want to say how good will he be? I don't know. But I do think he's going to be significantly better than last year. And so that's great because you need to be. You have Arliss Boardingham healthy right now and working his tail off according to the posts we see. Hayden Hansen, we like he should have played at least a little bit last year. But they are both expected to find their way onto the field consistently this year. Like I wouldn't hate it if we saw Florida this year treat the tight end room like they treated corner last year for most of last year. Just constant platoon swaps. You can go, okay. And also this year, by the way, you do have Jonathan Odom when he's healthy. He's going to be probably a starter opposite Dante Sanders. So treat it like a platoon swap like that. Go, all right, Dante Sanders, Jonathan Odom, first tight end group on the field. I know that a lot of Gators fans want it to be Arliss. I don't know if it'll be Arliss, but Jonathan Odom is also very good. Dante Sanders and Jonathan Odom, your starting tight end group, which I do think Jonathan Odom is solid enough as a route runner to be thought of as the pass catcher there. Or maybe it's Sanders. Maybe Sanders losing weight and getting more time and getting more work, especially with Russ Callaway, who I love William Peagler for what he did or for what he could do. Great recruiter, not a great tight ends coach. So Dante Sanders actually has a tight end coach in Russ Callaway here. So Dante Sanders, Jonathan Odom could be even thought of as just like versatile guys. You know, maybe one play, Jonathan Odom is the in line. Maybe the next play, Dante Sanders is the in line. Keep them as your first tight end group. Then you rotate in Arliss and Hayden. And it's like, all right, well, guess what? Now we've got the same stuff coming your way here. Arliss last year, in the very limited snaps, and from what we saw practice-wise, I don't think he was SEC ready to operate as a blocker. Think he could have worked as a receiver? Yeah. I still think that Arliss Boardingham is stylistically close to Travis Kelce. Obviously, skill set wise, not even close, or talent wise, not even close. But stylistically, Arliss Boardingham is that type of receiver tight end hybrid. He's not Kyle Pitts. He's more Travis Kelce, which is still obviously fantastic to have. But like, also, by the way, you need to see a more expanded tight end route tree. It was so high school last year. Wasn't great. Also, let them work flexed out more. You got Arliss. Let him play the slot a bit. Jonathan Odom could play the slot a bit. That power slot role. Hayden's like 6'6". Anytime I've stood next to him, I've hated myself immediately after it. On the goal line, put him out wide and just throw the fade. Like, what? If you're stopping him, you're probably getting a penalty. So just throw the fade there. But the tight end room, it's going to be, I think, deeper this year in the sense of just rotating in more players. I think last year was just they didn't want to throw the freshman in there, which I guess is fair. But, you know, if your biggest concern is inexperience, the only way to address that is by getting experience. So I do expect to see the tight end rotation go 4, maybe even 5 deep this year, and hopefully find some more consistent success than we saw last year and find some more production than we saw last year, which you will see. Like tight ends this year, I promise you, we're going to have more catches than they had last year because Graham Mertz loves to throw to the tight end. He does. In his career, he has loved to throw to the tight end. He's been very open about doing that. So Graham Mertz is going to throw to the tight ends more than Anthony Richardson did. That's not a complaint to Anthony Richardson. Different strokes, different folks, you know? But thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with Brian Smith and then Friday, Brandon Carroll. So again, great week lined up for you. Great way to end the week. Love it. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with Whole Nine Sports, Giants Country, NFL 33. And as always, I will see you all tomorrow.